What's up, everyone? Freedom of Fantasy here from Holistic Songwriting. Hope you guys are all doing great. Let's get started with the Q&A. All right. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say, I don't think. I mean, I'm working on a new program. Nothing to say while I wait for you guys to pop into the chat. But, yeah, I mean, I'm working on a program at the moment. Hey, Cynthia, how's it going? I'm going to pop over to the chat already. I'm working on a new program. It's going to be a 30-day challenge on ear training, which a lot of you guys have requested. And I think it's a super important subject that I've talked about many times before. So I feel like I should make a course on it. And this is going to be the first 30-day challenge, which is kind of more like a course. So it's definitely different from everything that I've done so far. But I think it's going to be really cool. It's certainly shaping up to be a lot of fun. And yeah, anything else? Not really. I wanted to explain what the Super Chat does. So with the Super Chat, if you ask a question through Super Chat, which is like this paid thing, so I think you can donate some money, or I don't even know how it works actually. But if you use the Super Chat, I will definitely answer your question. And the money that you're donating is going to go into a big fund. And out of that fund, at Christmas time, I'm going to pay for a couple of courses that I'm going to give away to people who otherwise couldn't afford to buy those courses. So the idea behind it is, again, that if you are donating something through Super Chat, first of all, you get your question answered 100%. And secondly, you're doing it for a good cause because you're helping others who otherwise couldn't afford my courses to, get some education. So let's see. The volume isn't as low as the other Q&As. Oh, that's already good, but maybe you just put your own volume up a little bit more this time. So, all right, should we just start with the Q&A, guys? What's the agenda of this chat? You can pretty much ask anything you want, Daniel. So anything music related, really. Like, I'm not really here to talk about my private life because I don't think many people are interested in that. But music related wise, you can pretty much ask away. So, Angel Wing says, do you write your own music? I sure do. That's why I do holistic songwriting. Like, because I have a passion for writing music, and I just love writing music. That's, why I started this whole thing. And so it wouldn't make much sense for me to teach songwriting if I don't write songs myself. I'm a producer and songwriter myself. Owen Nugent says, do you play an instrument? I do. I'm a guitarist, and I sing a little bit, but I'm definitely a better guitarist than a singer. I studied jazz guitar for 2 years, actually, in conservatory, but hated it, so I stopped doing it. But I've recently found my way back into guitar playing because I was a little bit disillusioned after studying it. So, but recently I've been playing a lot more again. I've been playing in a couple of bands, and last year I had maybe 40, 50 gigs or something like that. So, yeah, getting back on that. All right. Matthew Burrell says, what do you think is the perfect genre of music? I don't think there is one. I think all genres of music are really equally beautiful. Well, not equally beautiful. Some are definitely better than others, in my opinion. And again, it's down to opinion. My favorite genre is probably, like, if just from a musical standpoint, what I really like the stuff that James Blake is doing, because it's so, I don't know, it's just new. It feels like something we haven't heard a lot of. So I feel like that's the kind of music that I'm most interested in musically at the moment. Jazz music, I feel like, is kind of spinning in circles and has been for, a bunch of decades now. There's very few artists that break out of it. Those I find very interesting. But, most styles kind of are spinning in circles as far as I'm concerned. But in electronic music, and especially in alternative electronic music, there's still a lot going on. So that's the style I'm most interested in at the moment. All right, opinions on Taylor Swift's Reputation album, says Dovidas. I will actually be doing a podcast with Clifford Stummy from the Pop Song Professor on that this week. So you will hear my thoughts on Taylor Swift's new album there. Opinion on jazz scene, says Tomas Ho says. I used to listen to a lot of jazz. I don't so much anymore. I find it all keeps spinning in circles. There's either the traditionalists who keep playing the standards, and that I find super boring. And then there's the ones who are going, in my opinion, like way too far to avant-garde. And I don't know. I feel like music should still be fun to listen to and still give me an emotion, because if it doesn't give me emotion other than I want to throw up, then I don't know. It's just not my thing. I mean, I can listen to it to a certain extent of time just out of pure appreciation of what they're doing, like stuff like polyrhythms or something like that. I find that interesting, but it's not something that really speaks to me on an emotional level, so I don't really spend too much time. Milson Dono says, stimmt es, dass du Deutsch sprichst? If yes, your English is so damn good. Oh, well, thank you very much. Aber ja, ich spreche Deutsch, weil ich bin eigentlich auch Deutsch, deswegen. Jojo says, what advice do you have for artists that are just starting up? You have a decision to make. And that decision is whether you want to be an opportunist or, so basically, if you want to be a follower or a leader. Do you want to go with the time and just follow what everyone else is doing? Which is, that sounds like that's definitely the wrong option. It's certainly not. Like, there's a lot of musicians who are making their money exactly doing that, right? And it's definitely the easier way. If you want to make money and make a living from playing music, writing music, it's definitely easier to pursue like these short-term goals of saying like, oh, what's hip right now? Let's just do that. On the other hand side, if you go for long-term goals, if you want to, leave your stamp on the world, that's much harder to do. There's very few artists who have managed to do that, but coincidentally, those are the artists that we now know as megastars, typically. So you have a choice to make. Do you want to follow what everyone else is doing, or do you want to really do your own thing? And if you're doing your own thing, then just don't be afraid of, not that many clicks, or not that people coming up after the show to congratulate you how great your music was, because then you're really going to be doing your own thing, and then it's going to be a much more artistic thing. But if you're going to be on this opportunistic side of things, where you're like just looking at what everyone else is doing and just kind of following the trends, that makes it a lot easier to just kind of know who you are. You're just like following what everyone else is doing. The other part, that takes a little bit more work, because you have to figure out who you are, how you want to do things, how you want to do them differently, what makes you special, and how to translate that to a bigger audience. And that's probably the hardest thing to do. If you like going for really run-of-the-mill pop music, you kind of know the formula's there. But if you're trying to do your own thing, that takes a lot longer. So for me personally, I know this from writing, because I've written both. And like if I write a run-of-the-mill pop song, it might take me a day to a week. Like that's a typical time for me to write a pop song. It might take longer if I'm writing, if the song that I'm writing is really, really important. But typically a day to a week is a good estimate of time of how much it takes me to write an entire song, including the production and recording and everything. For an original song, like something that has an original sound, something that hasn't really been created before yet, that will take me, a month plus. So it could take longer than a month. And there have been songs that I've been writing on for 3 months, and not on and off, of course, but that's the nature of those projects as well, is that you're going to be doing a lot of on and off work. So yeah, I guess that's the biggest choice you have to make right off the get-go. What do you want to do? Do you want money and just kind of follow what everyone else is doing? You just love to make music, and it doesn't really matter if it's really an artistic expression or if it's therapeutic for you? Or do you want to do this other thing where you're really trying to start new trends and really create something, a niche of your own, which is much harder to do. It will take a lot more time. You will, not get that many clicks, and it's just like to build up something like that, it's going to take you at least 3 years, and a more realistic number is 10 years. All right. Daniel Gagliano says, I'm a veteran of the Army trying to learn how to write songwrite for years. My question is, can you talk through your creative process? Melody first, chords, or title? There isn't really a process. I think that's kind of the magic of it, is that it can be anything. Anything can start a song, and that's kind of the cool thing about it. It needs that magic. It needs that uncontrollable element that's different every time. And for me, I've I have like over 50, maybe over 100 or thousands of different ways to start a song. Now, I actually have a video on my YouTube channel called nine Great Ways to Start a Song. And that video includes 2 really weird ideas. That's some of the ideas that I will sometimes use, is like these really out of the box kind of ideas. Like one of them is play a famous song backwards and like sort of get inspired by that melody. Or another one was, what was the other one? There's another crazy one in there for sure. Oh yeah, there's the one with rolling a die, and because there's like these 6 chords in our tonal system, right? The Ionian system, they're of interest to us: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you just roll the die and see whatever number comes up, and that's going to be the next chord in your chord progression. And I always thought like it would be really cool to write a song about luck or about gambling with that sort of attitude, right? Like so for me, you know, that's the fun part. Like once you've done this a couple of times, you realize like you can really do anything, because you know where you get your ideas from can change dramatically. That doesn't really determine whether your song turns out great or, you know, shite. So it's really about the process that comes afterwards, and the process that comes afterwards is, a lot of it is really just experimenting. You know, is trying out things, seeing what works. The things that I don't really experiment with are lyrical storytelling. That's what I describe in my book, The Addiction Formula. That's kind of the rules that I set myself, and those I very rarely leave behind. That's kind of the basic building blocks, the basic skeleton of my song, if you will. But for the rest of it, it's really just a lot of experimenting. And for any given song part, I might try out as many as 50 different alternatives to see if I've got the best one. And that's really how I work. It's not like, oh, I know I got to do this and then it's going to be great. A lot of the time it's just like, well, let's try this, see if it works. And usually it doesn't. And so I, you know, keep doing that until I find something that's truly great. And the thing is, I'm very quick at that. You know, I can try something out in a matter of minutes or seconds, and that's kind of what that's what makes me a proficient songwriter. Otherwise, it would probably take me, you know, a year to finish a song. But since I can go through these alternatives so quickly, and just like, oh, let's see what this does. All right, didn't work. Let's go with this one. And just like, it's a very, you know, very loose, off the cuff kind of writing process for me. And I don't spend too much time on any alternative. It's just I go through those very quickly, and that's what works best for me. Anyways, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an answer. I know there's so much more to this. You know, this whole channel is about songwriting. So if you want to find out more about my process, I guess, you know, browse around the channel a little bit more. What's the best way to improve songwriting? Someone said. What was that? Oh, damn. I lost it. Says D. Jackson. What's the best way to improve songwriting? I think listening to other songwriters. And I don't mean like me, but I mean listening to records, and specifically records. Don't just listen to singles, really listen to the entire records, because it gives you an entirely different view on what's going on inside the artist's mind. And I, for one, have, you know, listened to those records to death. I will listen to an album, you know, up to 50 times or 100 times or 200 times. And that's kind of how I learned songwriting, is the more you hear something, the more you notice those details. And that's really when a song, you know, starts to come to life and you understand how it works and how you know, how the basis of it works. So that's what I would recommend, is listen to songs, but really listen intently. Don't listen to, you know, I have friends that listen to the charts and they just know every new chart song, and they maybe can sing along, but they've never really listened to the songs. And I think that's so important to, it's better to listen to one song in its entirety like 200 times, or maybe to a record 200 times, than it is to listen to 200 tracks once, or even 3 times. I think you really have to really listen to music if you want to be a great songwriter. Just really start listening to what's out there already, because we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And if you want to get better, just look at what everyone else is doing a little bit and see how they do it, and then you can figure out what you want to do. But not necessarily copy what they do, but just figure out what everyone else is doing, and then kind of figure out what your part in this whole industry is going to be. All right. Cynthia de la Torre says, I don't understand this question. Have you ran into artists with interesting ways of documenting their songwriting? Oh, you mean artists that openly talk about their songwriting process? Yeah, they're out there. I mean, it's for most people, it's still a mystery. I mean, most people don't exactly know what they're doing, so it's kind of hard to really find someone to really who really openly talks about their music because most of them don't really know what they're doing themselves. Um, yeah, I find that more in film music, and that's that like the classically educated composers, like they kind of know what they're doing, and they can talk about that a lot more openly. And I've been to a couple of workshops of these people, but songwriters I've always found, which was part why I started holistic songwriting, there wasn't really anything out there. People really talking openly about their process and having like, you know, this almost like a checklist and being like, hey, this is how this works for me. This is how this works for me. Because everyone thinks it's just opinion. Songwriting is only opinion and it's only about personal preferences. And I don't believe that to be true. I believe there are certain formulas that we all use, but if pressed, if someone asked us like, hey, do you always do this? We would all say no, just because we don't want to seem generic. But I think there are these generic rules. Angel Trumpet says, do you watch other more analytic music YouTube channels like Adam Neely and 12 Tone? Actually, I'm doing another podcast with 12 Tone, with Corey from 12 Tone tomorrow. And Adam Neely, yes, I definitely watch his stuff every now and then. And he's got some good stuff. Really like it. And I wouldn't say no to a collaboration as well. Like, I think he's got some really cool things going on. James Green says, do you find it harder to write melodies over extended chords, such as major, minor 7? Oh, gotcha. Oh, so 4 chords, you mean like with 7s and 9s and stuff like that? No, they're different for sure. And like to me, it just comes naturally now because I studied 2 years of jazz guitar, as I said. So that doesn't feel as difficult anymore. In the beginning, I think that would have been weird. Like if before my jazz studies, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. Now it's just second nature. It feels really natural to me because I played a lot of jazz, and so it's a different way of writing melodies for sure because it's much more of an arpeggiaic kind of melody writing. So it's much more following the chords than you are in pop music, where there isn't really that much movement, right? In pop music, most of it centers around a single note. It's kind of like a one-note melody with like, you know, that's kind of doing this, but it mostly centers around a single pitch. Whereas in jazz music, the chords kind of, there's all these shifts in harmony, so the melody kind of has to follow that. And so there's a lot more of this happening, and the melody outlining the chords to help the listener understand what the chords sound like, etc. So it's definitely more difficult, but for me, it's approximately the same. Like I'm kind of used to both of those sounds. And so, you know, after long years of studying it, to me, both of them make equal sense. Jason Baker says, lyrics seem to matter less nowadays in many genres. Do you notice this trend, and do you think this is a good or bad thing for the aesthetics of music? Yeah, I mean, I've noticed it. I think everyone has, that lyrics aren't the same. I'm not even sure if they're less good, because I mean there's been bad lyrics, you know, as far as we can remember. There have been these really terrible, cliched and boring kind of lyrics. We've had those for a long time, so it's not like that's new in our generation. What's maybe true though is that modern lyrics are maybe a little bit more shallow. I wouldn't even say that, actually. If you listen to the 60s lyrics, I mean, if you only compare modern music to Bob Dylan, sure, then it's all dumbed down lyrics. But if you compare it to, I don't know, you know, thinking of rock sets or James Brown, like, did they have amazing lyrics? Not really. I mean, it was good, right? But it's not like you think like, oh wow, that's a literary genius. So I don't know. Lyrics certainly have changed, and they're a lot more formulaic they are today than they were in the 60s or 70s. But there's still a lot to learn from them, and I'm still amazed by good lyric writers. Like, there's definitely something about a good lyric, and I find writing lyrics extremely difficult. So I'm still amazed if someone can design a text that goes hand in hand with the music and the melody. if that works, I think that's an amazing ability if someone can do that. And I know very, very little people that actually can write really great lyrics that work with music, because most people just tend to write poetry, and that's a really different thing actually. My songs tend to keep a simple chord progression. Is that good or bad? What's your preference? Says Seth Worthen, I guess. That's fine. Whatever floats your boat. I personally love simple chord progressions as well. I will throw in something really spicy every now and then, but I really don't mind a simple chord progression. Like, as long as you can get the emotion across, that's always the most important thing. And I think that's way more important than, getting out your secondary dominance or whatever, modal interchange. If that stuff makes you happy, then, by all means go for it. But if you need a reason, I think, right? It's all about the emotion. If you can't get an emotion across with that chord, then why use it? If I'm listening to Radiohead's, what's it called? Creep, that has some really interesting chords, and there it works. That really is there for a reason, because he's a freak and he would use those weird chords. So those chords make sense. But if you're writing something, a really pretty, cute little love song, and you're using secondary dominance and just like using all these crazy chords, I'm like, well, if you're doing it in jazz, fine. But if you're doing it for pop, I'm like, well, does that make sense? Not really. So it depends on you. It depends on what you like. And, don't feel bad if your chords are simple. There's plenty of artists who write very simple songs who are super successful, meaning they're speaking to a lot of people. So, yeah, whatever sounds good, really, says Preston TV as well. Cynthia de la Torre says, how can we ask you better questions? Well, I don't know. Anyone got a suggestion? Tom Madness says, what's a tag? I heard it's when you repeat the title of the song 3 or 4 times, but it could be other things. The way I know it is that a tag is kind of at the end of, like, usually this comes from folk and country music, that kind of thing, where you don't really have a chorus, but you just have like different A sections. So like different verses, basically. And the way it all ties together lyrically and how it all kind of becomes coherent is that the very last line of all those blocks is the same. There was a Paul Simon song, Still Crazy After All These Years, which does exactly that. So it's like A, but like every A section ends on Still Crazy After All These Years. And then the second one is a different text, but then the last line again, Still Crazy After All These Years. So that's how I know attack. And I haven't really heard the term that much anymore, because it is mostly country and folk kind of thing. Most songs now have choruses because that's where the money is usually. So, since music is becoming more commercialized as we go, taglines have kind of fallen to the wayside. All right. How to connect your song to the background music, says Edwayne Jules. I don't even know what you mean by that. So the song to you is just the melody? Do you mean the melody to the background music? Please clarify. Shaker Maker, cool title, says, does the melody on top of the chords have to be complicated, or should I try to harmonize using my voice, trying to make some R&B/rap music? No. I don't know what you mean by harmonize. With one voice, it's a little bit hard to harmonize, but I think melodies don't have to be complicated. Not at all. I mean, I know a lot of you are hating on Taylor Swift, but she's really good at writing really simple melodies. She's really good at that, and it's excellent studying her music for just that. She's really good at those, making just a single note interesting, sound interesting. So I really don't think melodies have to be complicated. I think melodies have to speak to us. That's what they have to do, and they have to evoke some kind of emotion. Again, it comes down to emotion. So don't worry too much about it. And I do think, though, that you should be singing all of your melodies. I don't think you should write them out on paper. I've done that a couple of times, in school and conservatory. I had counterpoint class as well, and I just don't believe that really produces any good melodies that sound like now anymore. All right. Cynthia de la Torre says, do you think you have multiple niches? Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I don't really write for myself that much, even though I'm thinking about making a little EP for myself now. Because I'm mostly writing for other artists, I have to be able to write in different niches. So, yes. Ah, it jumped again. What's your opinion on Trent Reznor, says Carl Johan Tenstrom. Love it. Not all of it, but some of it I really think is amazing. Like his score for Gone Girl, for example, I thought was really amazing. And obviously, like, the stuff he does for Nine Inch Nails is also really cool. Oh. Daniel says, Dankeschön. Thank you. In German. Daniel says, do you use a DAW to write or just a single instrument? DAW. Both, really, but mostly DAW. All right. I think I'm back where I was. What happens if each song you make is inspired by a different genre? Market each one of those individually to different characters using Facebook ads? Could we lose friends since you didn't stick to one? Yeah, that's kind of how it is, unfortunately. Like if you market yourself as a folk writer and all of a sudden you make something that's too rock or too hip hop, you will lose some fans. That's just how it works. People subscribe to you because they want one thing from you, which is why when I upload videos like this one, I lose some people who are only here for the artist series. That's just how it is. The way I see it is you're weeding out the people who didn't really want to know about you in the first place. So, for example, in my case, right, with the artist series, a lot of people are watching the artist series because they're just interested. They're fanboys, right? They're interested in whoever, Drake, Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, whatever. And when they see Q&As, they're getting annoyed by those because they're like, well, I'm not a songwriter or a producer. I just want to know about those artists. And so they unsubscribe. Now, is that good or bad for me? It's bad because we want more subscribers, right? Well, do we though? Is it really important to have a lot of subscribers, or is it more important to have a few subscribers that really love what you're doing? And that's a question you have to answer for yourself. I personally am of the second persuasion. And there's a book you could read that's called the 1000 True Fan Theory. I think the book is just called 1000 True Fans. And that talks about that in depth. And I think it's a really interesting marketing approach. And that's something I certainly chose to do, where I'd rather market to 1,000 people well and really create products that are really interesting to 1,000 people than create some kind of vague and kind of boring stuff, to be honest, for millions of people, right? So that's kind of my approach. So you have to know what you want, really. It's a little bit hard to do all these different things if you're a songwriter. I know we all get inspired by different genres and we all want to write all these different things. But really, you kind of have to pick one thing if you want to make money off of it, unless you write for other artists. And so that way, that's what I'm doing. It makes it a little bit easier to spread your talents. All right. Edwayne Jules says, is it possible to write a song through guesswork and a hot beat? I'll just answer the first part. Is it possible to write a song through guesswork? It is. You might think it's not, but I've gotten songs from people where I thought like, wow, this is amazing. And then I hear another one of their songs and I'm like, wow, but this is so bad. And that has happened more than once. And I've done that too. Like if I listen back to my first tracks, like most of them are shit, but there's one or two that are like amazing. I'm still like, wow, I wrote that back then. That's crazy. So yeah, sometimes it's just pure luck. Some songs just tell you what to do in a way, Some songs it's just more of a discovery and you have to figure out what the song wants. But there's just some songs that are just almost write themselves. And, there's a fair amount of luck in that. So I don't know. I think so. Yes, I think you can write a song, even a hit song, purely by luck. Not maybe the production, because that's a very technical part, like that you need a lot of knowledge for and a lot of experience. But certainly purely the writing part, if you're not too stupid, which none of you are, of course, then I think Yeah, it's definitely possible. Cynthia says, do you think we're paying too much attention to everyone else and not enough on developing our own selves? That's a really good one. In general, absolutely. And specifically with songwriting, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's so hard to sit in front of your computer and not open your emails and not go on Facebook and not go on Instagram and just really work and really spend some time every day to do what you love, which is songwriting. And I mean, I haven't written in a while now, you know, and it's really bugging me. I get really antsy. I get really annoyed and almost aggressive because of it, because I love writing, and it sucks because there's this dam inside my head and I have all these ideas, and every day I'm recording new ideas into my phone, but I just don't have the time to, you know, make them into a finished production. So that's super frustrating. And that's the wrong thing to do. You should put some time aside every single day where nothing else matters, where Metallica reference there, where nothing else matters, where you just focus on writing and just focus on yourself. And it doesn't necessarily have to be writing, although I think that's very important. It could also be anything else that's creative. If you're painting something, or if you're, I don't know, writing a text that is original, that's all fine. If you're designing something in Photoshop, I feel like that's all kind of coming from the same vein. So I enjoy all of these things equally. But there needs to be some time every day where you put some time into your craft, where you develop yourself as a creative person. And that could also mean reading books. And there's so many good books on creativity and all of that kind of stuff. So yes, for sure. Like you need to put some time into yourself, really figure out what you want to do, and then just do it for 1 or 2 hours every single day. Cool. Daniel Gagliano says, Gary Burton of Berkeley breaks down melody and improv very well. I haven't seen that video, but I'm sure he's really good at it. Berkeley in general is very good at that kind of stuff. All right, that's a good one. Joe Greenan says, so you say there are a multitude of different ways to start a song, yet in your book you say that you can't just approach it randomly, that you have to have an energy plan. Can you elaborate on this? So where I think we went past each other is there's 2 different stages to songwriting. There's a creative phase and a critical phase. There's one where you get your ideas and where you figure out what the general gist of the song is going to be. And then there's one where you kind of put it all together and kind of forge it into a finished song. And most of songwriting is that second part. Most of it is skill and figuring out, like, okay, should it be this key or should it be this key? And, you know, should it be this voicing or this voicing? Or, you know, do I take out this note? Do I take out that note? Do I, you know, take out all of it? Is all of it shit? You know, that's kind of the difficult part of songwriting. I think everyone can be creative, but figuring out how to turn it into a professional song, that's quite a different task. And for that second part, that's where the addiction formula is really, really useful. And I use it for that all the time. For the first part, just ways to start a song is different for me every single time, really. So just the idea how the song starts can be anything. Can be a lyric, can be a title. As I said, can be rolling dice. Anything. You know, sometimes I hear songs and I'm like, there's just this one note in there. That has happened to me often, actually. I listen to a song and I'm like, just this one note against this chord. That sounds so cool. I got to do that in a song. And then that turns into a whole song, maybe from a completely different genre, but just that sound of that one note against that one chord, that can already start a song. But the addiction formula comes in at a later stage, when I already kind of know what I want to do, what I want to say musically. And then the addiction formula is kind of like the translation to a bigger audience, right? And that's kind of what it was written for, is to help you express yourself artistically, but at the same time, do it in such a way that a bigger audience can understand what you're basically talking about. All right. Vina Vine says, call me crazy, but there are no rules to songwriting. That's one I get quite a lot, actually. And you are 100% right and you're 100% wrong. It depends on your angle. And with holistic songwriting, when I started this, I had to figure this out for myself as well, because I truly believe that there are no rules in songwriting. But I also believe that there are rules in songwriting. And that I had to figure out for myself. And how I think it works is, it depends what your angle is. What do you want to achieve with your songwriting? Are you writing because you want to express yourself artistically, or is it because you're writing for therapeutic reasons? Maybe you're depressed and you like use it as a way to get it out of your system, or maybe you're angry or something like that. Then that's great. And I can't really help you with that, because you have to figure out how to do that, and you have to figure out what works best for you there. But if there's a third option, and that is writing commercially for a big mass of people. And that's what I can help you with, because if you listen to the charts, you kind of hear the same things over and over again. And what is that dictated by? Not just by songwriters copying each other, but it's dictated by what people want to hear. If people turn off a song, then some radio company registers that, like, because they have really clever algorithms that figure this stuff out for them. And they figure out, like, okay, this song doesn't work, so we have to, make it shorter or something like that, or take it out of the program completely. And so what you hear on the radio is your own fault, in other words. What most people like, that's what's going to be on the radio. And so that's why, like, the biggest stations mostly have music that no one really likes. Like, they're just all right because they're, made for the masses. Everyone is supposed to like them. They're not really made to be loved by people. You know what I mean? All right. Zach Rose says, when would you use secondary dominants? I would use them if I want to sound crazy, mad, weird, out there, classical, if I'm writing something film music related-ish, jazzy, if I want to sound, again, weird, funky, that kind of thing. Funky is definitely a good word, by the way. Sexy, something that's closely related to being funky. So that's when I would use secondary dominants. If I want to have something that's like weird and out there and just like has all that rub and all of that edge. But I would never use it in a song that is like a pop song, essentially, like that has really simple chords, and then you throw in a secondary dominant. That's never going to work. It's always going to be, all of it has to be a little bit quirky, a little bit weird, and then when you throw in that secondary dominant, it's just, it should fit into the whole picture, is what I'm saying. Tom Madness says, pop is not simple stuff as most people think. Behind it, there's a whole science. Definitely true. Definitely true. Max Martin calls it what's it called? Melody math or music math? What's he call it again? I'm sure you guys know. But yeah, he has this whole set of rules that he uses to write songs that change all the time, of course. But yeah, for sure. There's a whole science behind it. 100%. Trada101 says, how do you make electronic drums sound more real on Ableton? I have a whole course about that, actually, which covers that. Is called the Drum Writing for Non-Drummers course, and you can find it on my page at blog.holistic-songwriting.com/products, or just go to holisticsongwriting.com and hit products in the tab, or like one of the tabs says products. Okay, Vina Vine says, there's a science to everything if you look hard enough. That's kind of true. That's kind of true. But in songwriting in particular. All right. Vina Vine says, you'd use secondary dominance when it sounds good in the song. It's not rocket science. If it sounds good, use it. Yeah, exactly right. It's obvious. It's, in a way, if it sounds good, then you should use it. Always try out your alternatives as well. Because if you find another chord that's maybe simpler, I personally tend to go for the simpler chord. Unless I, as I said, want that quirky sound. In that case, I wouldn't do it. Jason Baker says, okay, name a really good recent lyric, please. Well, I think Weeknd had some really cool ones, actually. I think he had some pretty interesting lyrics. Not traditionally great lyrics, but just like thematically, I thought they said some things that I hadn't heard before. And that to me is already great lyric writing. If you can say something that's just hasn't been done before, I already think that's pretty cool. And he did it well. So that would be one artist that I'm thinking of. Katy Perry even did Chain to the Rhythm, which I think is not a bad lyric, actually. It's fairly deep. It's like hashtag deep. All right, I'll give you that. But it's, I mean, for something that's made for the masses, I think it's pretty good. And obviously, if you want to go deep, if you're looking for deep lyrics, you don't look in pop. You look into the alternative sector, because that's where people are. That's where writers are that are actually interested in writing complicated lyrics. Daniel says, which do you do more? Do you start with the emotion, come up with the phrase, and make the melody? Or do you have a melody first and fit the words? For me personally, it's melody first and then I fit the words. That's not how everyone does it, and that's not how I always do it. I know songwriters who only write lyrics. Like, their whole job as a songwriter is just to write lyrics that could potentially be sung well. But for me personally, I like to just sing something, and if I find like a melody that I think is really cool and interesting and haven't heard it before, that's kind of how it starts for me usually. Sometimes I have what you might call an emotion. For me, mostly it's a title or an idea what I want my song to be about. Like, for example, I had this idea for a long while, writing a song called Viral. And the main line is going to be, I'm about to go viral. And then that's my one idea. And then I'm like, okay, so this probably has to sound like weird, and it has to sound like it could go viral. So something that's really messed up, kind of, that people would share because it's so crazy. And so that kind of gets me rolling, you know. I'm like, okay, what would that sound like? So I would probably use some really weird synths, and it would be all over the place, and it would be really densely written. Like, it wouldn't be longer than 3 minutes, I think. It would like really be high intensity, high energy. How would I do that? So I would use those drums, I would use those synths, I would use that kind of vocal, I would probably pitch it all over the place. And so, like, you know, that gets me rolling. That was just off the cuff, just rambling, and that's kind of how my songs start. I'm just thinking, okay, this is my concept and this is what comes out of it. But at the same time, sometimes it's just a melody. You know, as I said, on my phone, I've over 100 or more probably files of just me singing different lines that I come up with, usually in my drive home in the car, because I don't have a radio, which is good, by the way. And I just sing those into my phone, and whenever I need a melody, I'll just go through, because you're like, oh yeah, that sounds cool and that's inspiring, let's start with that. But the most important thing that I'm always looking for is it needs to be inspiring. That's also the same thing. That's the question I ask myself when I'm looking for artists that I want to work with, or instrumentalists that I want to work with, or other people that I want to work with. That's what I'm looking for when I'm, you know, finding chords, melodies. It needs to be inspiring. If it doesn't inspire me, then I don't know. I'm not going to pick it. Which is also why for example, I never will write a song that's just like G, E minor, C, D. Like, I'll never write a song that does that with just the standard open voicings. I'm never going to do that because it's not inspiring to me. I'm just like, well, that's been done so many times. Like, I would just be afraid of doing something that a lot of other people have done already. So for me, it's always got to be like some interesting lick if I'm writing on the guitar, or some, I don't know, some cool, interesting chords that no one else has used before that really inspire me because it's, you know, something new. So hopefully that answers your question. Trada 101 says, name some romantic chords. I think really romantic chords are, it depends a little bit on the voicing, and the voicings are really key with this as well, I feel. Just like the most basic ones are the 1 and the 4. 1 and the 4, the 6 as well, if it's alright to have a little bit more of a sadder kind of sound. And then especially if you add the 7 on top of them. So the 1 major 7, 4 major 7, obviously they have a very dreamy kind of beautiful kind of quality. And then minor 7 has a major chord in it. So A minor 7 has a C major chord in it, right? Because it's A, C, E, G, and C, E, G is a C major chord. So it has that happy quality in there as well, and it kind of sounds dreamy. D minor 6 is another good one, because that's also something in reverse. What is that? So we have D, F, A, B. So that will be B, D, F. So there's am I saying that right? There's a diminished chord in there? Or am I messing something up here? So I don't know, like there's like all these the six chords or seventh chords, they have that kind of quality, right? That gives you a little bit of that dreamy, romantic feel. And dreamy and romantic, the only difference really to me is whether it's major or minor. Minor chords can be really dreamy, but the minor chords are seldomly romantic. So yeah, and also I'd probably stick to simple chord progressions or to stuff that it's like medians, you know, so going from C major to A flat major or C major to E flat major or something like that. That could also work really well if the voice leading checks out really well. So that's something I would experiment with, you know, add those sevenths, try those nines, 13s can also work to a certain extent, depends on the chord a little bit. Yeah. And oh yeah, I want to talk about the voicing. One voicing that I really like is to play the root, then the root note. Sorry, the third, then the root note of the chord, and then the fifth, which is a really wide voicing. But playing major chords like that, I always find sounds really pretty, and I've used it on a number of film scores. And also, if you're looking for a romantic sound that is more like really in-depth romantic sound, then like my favorite stuff is always Debussy. I love his, you know, the way he uses chords. Sounds to me very romantic and super beautiful. Like L'après-midi d'un enfant or whatever that song is called. That's super, super beautiful. And that's something I would check out if I were you. If you're interested in like more complex harmonic constructs. Because you can still take those chords and turn them into something a little bit more, not pop, but a little bit more commercial, I guess. All right. Do you recommend any books? Says Lorenzo Cruciti. Oh man, so many. The one that's lying on my table right now is this one. It's by the guy who wrote, David Mitchell, who wrote Cloud Atlas. This is just like a fiction, but can be fun. I like horror, so that was fun to read. No, but I'm guessing you're probably asking about nonfiction. Oh man, there's so many. Mostly about marketing and self-development. Those I find the most interesting. Songwriting books, I haven't really found that many really good ones that really speak to me and that really make me think like, oh wow, I got to try this out. This is really like something I haven't considered before. Most of it, I gotta be honest, felt fairly obvious to me. And that's such a shitty thing to say, I know, because it's always so easy to be in hindsight say like, oh yeah, I knew all of this, of course. But I don't know. Before I started reading songwriting books, I had already written for a couple of years. And so when I started reading them, I was like, oh, this is not really that much more in depth than what I had already been doing. Obviously, my own book, The Addiction Formula. But in terms of self-development, man, I mean, I love that book. I don't know if it's the right place to talk about it, but Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Thinking Fast and Slow is definitely the most impressive, most amazing book I've ever read in my entire life. And I think it's the most incredible thing ever. If you're interested in perception and how we all perceive the world and how statisticians see the world, and Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winning statistician. It's, wow, that's a book, man. That's just right up my alley. Like, I love that kind of stuff about perception and behavioral psychology. I think that's so interesting. So that's one kind of, that has nothing to do with songwriting, but well, it does to a certain degree, but not like directly. But that's one oh man, I gift that a lot, that book, actually. It's a really good one. All right. Will shaving my head make my songwriting more streamlined, says Zach Rowe. You bet. Oh man, it's jumped again. All right, here we are. That was a terrible question, Cynthia. Ask better questions. Oh yeah, I think he knows which one. I think I know which one he's talking about. The one where she said, like, how can we ask you better questions? Romance is subjective. I don't know. I don't think it is. I think we can write something that is truly romantic. And I think most people would agree that it's romantic. You might not like romance, but I think there are some chords that definitely sound more romantic than others. I wouldn't say that like if you use that chord, it's definitely going to sound romantic, but if you like tweak it in certain ways, I'm pretty sure I can turn a chord into something romantic. Oh, that's a good one. Daniel Gagliano says, have you listened to Norwegian pop artist Jarle Bernhoft? What do you think of his songwriting? He is a god. I love this guy. He's my favorite melody writer of all songwriters. His melodies are just, man, jaw-droppingly good. I just love Bernhoft. He has Come On Talk, and my favorite melody of his has to be Choices, the verses of that song. Oh my God, I just love it. And it just, oh man, I can't hold back how much I love this guy. Jarle Bernhoft is like, he's absolutely incredible. And he has like this ballad too, Stay With Me, which is so beautiful. I just, oh man, I love his sense of melody. He's an absolute genius. Trader 101 says, is it important to know the music business and not to just focus on the music? Unfortunately, yes. Unless you're getting picked up by a team of in the know people, like, you know, if you're Ariana Grande and you just like meet the right people that just sort of chauffeur you through the whole business, you might be lucky. And she has the right people to work with that are in the industry and that said like, okay, we need someone like her to, as an artist, and we're going to push that artist. That can happen, but it's not what's going to happen to you, nor does it happen to a lot of people. So yes, unfortunately, you need to know a little bit about the music business. But what most people think that means is like, oh, I have to know how it works with, I have to get a lawyer now, and I have to, I don't know, do my taxes. And obviously that's part of it too. But most importantly, I think you have to realize how people today consume and buy things. I think that's the most important question that you have to find an answer to. Because how selling works and how consuming works has dramatically changed with the internet over the last 30 years and over the last 10 years, especially with Spotify coming onto the market. So that's, I think the biggest challenge is going to be figuring out how people think nowadays and what people respond to. So that's what you need to know about the music business. And that's the question you have to answer for yourself. And that's what you have to find out. Vina Vine says, why do you write music? I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but there's a lot of songwriters who say like, I need music to breathe, but it's kind of what it is for me. I'm a creative person. I just have that urge to be creative, and it doesn't necessarily have to be music. Like I'm happy as, you know, writing a book, you know, writing the addiction formula or designing something in Photoshop is equally fun to me. Doing a live Q&A like this, where it's about, you know, coming up with good answers, is the same thing. It's something that I can put my mind to 100%, where I have to be focused, and hopefully something great comes out of it. That's, I think, why I like it. I think it's just, I need it. You know, I really get cranky when I can't write or can't create anything. If I'm just doing paperwork, I get really cranky. So I just need it, really. That's really the best answer I can give you. And it really, truly does make me happy. And once I'm in that zone, and that happens quite often, fortunately, with me, that I can just write and forget everything around me. And unfortunately, I've missed quite a lot of Skype sessions because of that, and other appointments. But yeah, I mean, I love losing myself in the music or whatever art project it is, because I just love being creative. I love, I guess, expressing myself. I'm sure there's like some really egocentric reasoning behind all of this. HK says, after a middle eight within a ballad, is it good to give the listener a false chorus with less instrumentation, or just go into a full one? Thanks. Up to you. The addiction formula talks about that a little bit more. It's really all about the energy levels and managing those. If you can do that, you're going to be fine. Both really work well. I think I should scroll through a little bit quicker because there's a lot of questions that are still coming up. I can see that from the scrolling bar, and I only have about 5 more minutes left in this video, so I'll go a little bit faster through these. Oh, this is a good one. Jason Baker says, I find some music others love does not reach me emotionally. Joni Mitchell, Captain Beefheart. Do you think it's just taste, Or am I missing something? Does everyone value emotion in music? That's a lot of questions. Personally, I understand where you're coming from because I'm not a big Joni Mitchell fan either. And I can appreciate what she does in her music, which is why I can listen to it and still enjoy it, but it comes from a different angle. It's not that I can really sit back and just enjoy the music. For me, it's more like, oh wow, she's doing some really cool things here, or her melody is amazing, or she's really on pitch here, or whatever. Her timing is amazing. So I can really appreciate that. But so it's not a really like emotional response that I get to that artist, which is why I wouldn't really listen to her in my free time. So I think it's both. I think it is taste, but also I think you're missing something to a degree, because I never liked electronic music when I grew up. I really hated house music and all that kind of stuff until someone told me like people were listening to it. Like we were listening to it in class, actually in conservatory, because I studied in the Netherlands, where electronic music is the shit. Like everyone's into electronic music in the Netherlands. Like that's where Armin van Buuren and Tiesto and all these people are from. And so we were listening to house music, and everyone was just talking about the bass drum. And I was like, the bass drum? Who cares about the sound of the bass drum? And that's when it struck me that, wow, these people are really listening to music differently than I do. And it's a really different thing. People listen to music differently. That's just a fact. So there, in every single music style, I truly believe, has something that makes it special and that makes it great to people. Not necessarily to me, but every musical style has something that makes it great. I never liked jazz when I was growing up. So it took me 2 years to really wrap my head around what jazz did. And I actually had a class, how to listen to jazz, in conservatory. And after that class, I really was like, oh, so that's what people are listening for when they're listening to jazz. That kind of makes sense. And I get it now. And all of a sudden, I like listening to jazz. Still not everything, but like all of a sudden, like that door just opened and there was some music that I liked listening to. So does everyone value emotion in music? Yes, for sure. But we find different emotions in different things. So for example, what one person might find really emotional and that might really get them, might almost make them cry. Another person might find cheesy or corny. So the way we interpret that, I think, is just due to our upbringing and how we perceive certain things. If our mother told us when we grew up, for example, I don't know, Coldplay is just really cheesy and it doesn't really sound like he means what he says. I'm not saying that that's true, but when that's what your mother tells you or your best friends say, then you believe that, right? And we all had those bands as a kid that we hated just because everyone else hated them, of our friends, you know. So so we can sort of like distance ourselves from certain sounds in our youth. But I think that is pretty much trained. That's something we learn. That's not something we're born with. Okay. Cool, man. Glad to hear it, Daniel. Really nice comment. I do really love what you're doing, and I'm so grateful to be able to talk to a mentor about this directly. Thank you so much. Well, happy to do it, man. Mikael says, do you think that instrumental production in the style of Amy Winehouse's last record could work to be in a hit song? Do you think people would like it in a world of overused hi-hat music? Absolutely. Adele is kind of doing that in a way, isn't she? So, yeah, there's always an anti-movement against what everyone else is listening to. Like, if everyone loves trap, there's always a group of people that goes like, I hate trap. I hate everything these people are doing. And so those people are going to be listening to your music. And if what you're doing is great, then you are going to find some fans. All right. Alexander Pressler says, props to your book, dude. Thank you so much. I really love it. Do you plan a new one? Actually, I've been tinkering with the idea, and I have had an idea for a while, and it's slowly coming together, but it's going to take a couple more years until it's finished, probably. But yes, I have something that I'm currently brainstorming for. Carl Johan Tenstrom says, how long is the longest song you've written, and how short is the shortest song you've written? Shortest song I've ever written, probably like 1.5 minutes. Longest, if you don't count film music, if it's really about songs. It's a good question. Man, there's been so many. I can't really think straight right now. I don't know, something like 8 minutes, but I'm just guessing here. I don't really know. Have I ever written something that's really long? I mean, I've definitely written a song that was 7.5 minutes. Like, that's one I can recall right now. I don't know. The rest I can't really remember. I like Erykah Badu's style of writing and creating her music, says Junya Bunya. Yeah. Dude, Erykah Badu's the shit. She's amazing. Alexander Pressler says, so sad when music is not made to be loved. Yeah, that's true, but it's a business, so what do you expect? All right, I'll answer one more question. Let me scroll through and find a really good one and end on that. By the way, hello, Blue and Me. She says it's her first time here. Oh, man. I love trap, but if I hear another 808, I'm going to scream. I know what you feel. I know what you mean. All right. Man. Seriously, this is like turning into the worst episode ever because it's just me like just scrolling. Oh wow, this is the right channel for me. I'm really happy to finally have found you, says Blue and Me. Well, thank you so much. That is really nice. Kariana says, Friedemann, why do you tend to go live during dinner time? Well, I try to pick a time that is all right with me, 6 p.m. here in Germany. That also means, like, for my American listeners and viewers, for them it's 9 a.m. in LA or 12 p.m. in New York. So I try to figure out that time. And I don't really want to do later here because I like to work in the evenings. All right, so what's going to be the last question? Guys, this is turning into the worst episode ever, and I'm pretending like it's your fault, but it's your fault because you're not giving me good enough questions here. All right, so I'm just going to go for one for at random. All right, what kind of production or music style would you go for if you're trying to sound charismatic, effortless, mysterious female singers, please? We love you, says Brownies. Thank you so much. Who's we? A lot of brownies. I love brownies too. Anyways, what kind of production or music style would you go for if you're trying to sound charismatic, effortless, mysterious? Female singer, please. Well, first of all, I think you have to be charismatic to sound charismatic. But to me, it's probably gonna be something like R&B, something that has that vibe of like cult. These cult followings, like if I'm thinking of cult films like Pulp Fiction or I don't know, films like that. Like they have soundtracks that are like these R&B alternative tracks, where it's just like that to me is like the most charismatic music. So I think it would be something like that, I guess. It would definitely be live instruments. It wouldn't be electronic music because it has to sound real, I think. And effortless to me means slower tempos, tempi, I guess. Maybe some complex jazz harmony. I could see that happening. Very, very lyric-driven kind of writing, where it's a lot about the story that's being told. yeah, as I said, slower songs, kind of ballads, kind of just cool. Like I'm thinking cool jazz is like the first thing that came to mind. Like Chet Baker, those kind of people, which is like the coolest sound to me ever. Like the just the most relaxing sound. So that's something someone I'd check out and check out what he does. If you want to do something more modern, I think your best bet is probably R&B. And you know, specifically thinking of Adele here, because she also has like this live instrumentation, but she's essentially an R&B singer. So people like that, yeah. And I think that's it. So guys, thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed this once again very, very much. And I have this thing. Oh, hold on. Let me just. There we go. All right. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to download my free stuff over here, or take one of my pro courses by going to the Holistic Songwriting website and going to the products tab. And also feel free to subscribe on YouTube, and also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. And Facebook really is where it's at lately. I mean, I do answer questions on Twitter every now and then, but Facebook is where the best stuff happens. So that's where that's where I post the most stuff. So if you're not following me on Facebook yet, then that's where you should go. Guys, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this a lot, and see you next Monday. Cheers.